created under those conditions. And the stuff that was put in and the stuff that was left out, non-canonical Gospels, for example, which are a little bit embarrassing if you read them, they cause a bit of trouble, so we'll leave those out. The ones that allowed Constantine to say, bloody good job, Eusebius, right, everybody, you're all Christians, get the cross, go kill people. So Christianity suddenly expanded. However, one of the things that Eusebius and the others were arguing about, that they kept a bit quiet when they were actually drawing up the stuff for Constantine, was, what is the nature of Christ? Is he God? Is he human? Is he human with divine aspirations? Is he the Son of God? What do we mean by the Son of God? Is he divine because he is God? Is he divine because he's a human who's acquired the attributes of God? This level of splitting the definition of what Christ was went on ad infinitum. And in the 8th century, the Christians in the Eastern Roman Empire were still killing each other over the nature of the divinity of Christ. So that person from outer space, looking at all this lot, says, well, you're arguing about whether this person is divine because he's the Son of God, or he's divine because he's a particular type of... What the hell is that all about? The worst part was, the person from outside looks at the world and says, these are the highest form of life on their planet. They have the gift of consciousness. They have the gift of empathy. Anybody know what empathy is? Empathy is the ability to put yourself into somebody else's shoes. Once you've got empathy, you stop doing nasty things to people because you know what it feels like. So these people on earth have got consciousness, they've got empathy, and yet they've got this thing called religion, which, far from meeting some basic need they have, seems to only create conflict amongst those who have different religious views. Not surprisingly, it gets back in his spaceship and wants nothing whatsoever to do with it. So, the view from outside is that religion does not actually meet a need for mankind, for human beings. It may meet a need for an individual, but the impartial observer, it's very obvious that it does a disservice for mankind. I could argue that's wrong. There was a guy called Malthus. Anybody know Malthus? Who was a sociologist in the 19th century. And he claimed that bad things happened in order to keep the population down. So there were wars in order to keep the population down. There were tsunamis in order to keep the population down. It was a bit like, this concept was a bit like the later Gaia concept, where the Earth self-regulates itself. The population is kept under control by some means, so they don't get too many people on the planet. So perhaps religion is one of the ways that mankind has of controlling its population by killing each other. I think that's a bit glib, but it's a possibility.
Like a disease.
Sorry?
Like a disease.
Like a... Now, that's psychopathology. We'll come on to that in a minute. Right. The external need for religion. What do I mean by the external need for religion? Does religion serve a purpose outside of the individual? And the answer, it very obviously does. It's a means of social control. So, the Catholic Church, for example, exerts enormous control over people within the church. Rulers of countries and states have used religion as a means of control. Yes, you can come if you like. Religion's a very powerful force because Christianity says, render unto Caesar that which is Caesar's, so pay your taxes. It also says, you don't pay your taxes, that's what it says. You know where you're going to end up, down there. Well, so it's a very threatening and oppressive oh, it's the dustbin. It's true that almost all religions support the status quo. There are exceptions. You've heard of liberation theologists? A bunch of Catholics, particularly in South America, who were on the side of people who were trying to fight against oppression. The reaction of the hierarchy of the Catholic Church to liberation theologists was they were disowned by the Catholic Church. Religion has always maintained the status quo. It's always been in the interest of keeping the state going as it is. The Americans have always used religion by proxy. The people that they're trying to oppress in South America, in particular the American Fruit Company, which controls huge amounts of fruit growing in South America, is quite happy to use the Catholic Church to keep the peasants of South America under control. So there is an external need for religion used by institutions and governments to control their populations. The internal need for religion is the most interesting one. What is the need that it meets for most people? For some reason they seem to have two fundamental questions they can't answer for themselves. The two fundamental questions are, where did it all come from? And what happens when I die? Now to us, those are not particularly significant questions. It doesn't keep me awake at night worrying about what's going to happen when I die. I will rot, and a tree will grow on my grave, and that tree will produce paper to produce a book about atheism, which will probably make a few more religious people very annoyed. In other words, there's a cycle going on, and I'm not pleased to be part of that cycle, and rotting and dying does not bother me one bit. The pain part, before dying, that does bother me, but the dying doesn't bother me. So they have a problem with death. They have a problem with where does it all come from. And they do not understand why we don't find those questions particularly troublesome. They don't bother me, but they do bother them. They also say, what is the meaning of life? Well, apart from 42, which I think is Hitchhiker's Guide, isn't it? My response to that is a stupid question. What's the meaning of life? Life just is. Get on with it. Enjoy it. They have a desire for a parent figure. Now, am I being arrogant here? Down at the bottom, you notice I've got Freud. I'll come back to Freud in a minute. But the desire for a parent figure, growing up is hard to do. Which I think that's an assault. Anyway, growing up is hard, but becoming an adult is difficult. Because up until that point, you've always had someone you can turn back to. You've always got somebody else's checkbook you can rely on. You've always got someone who's going to do the washing when you take it home during the holidays. You've always got somebody that if the worst comes to the worst, you can go back to mum and dad. So there's always a prop, the prop of the family of the parent. But as you become an adult, to some extent you resent that prop. You still love that prop, but you want to stand on your own 2 feet. You want to make your own decisions in life. You want to earn your own income. You want to do your own thing, not under the control of the parent figure. Similarly, responsibilities come with being an adult. Making your own living, buying a house, getting married, having kids. There's a whole load of responsibilities come with being an adult. The fact is that some people find that break very, very difficult to do. Especially the part of the break that says you're responsible for your own life. You are responsible for whether you are a good person or a bad person. And you are responsible for determining how you judge whether you're a good person